part of the reason why we're able to connect is our mutual acquaintance, Glenn, who is, I think we were both in his book about adventure that's due to come out. And then you were part of our Activate project. This is actually the first time we're talking. And he suggested a few things to ask you about. And I was really curious about the spirit surgeon, the no anesthetic surgeon that you went to see somewhere in South America. It sounded really intriguing. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's a long time ago. It's over 20 years ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think, I can't remember the year I went. It might have been 2000, 2001, that kind of time. And I read a book by a Japanese journalist called In Search of Brazil's Quantum Surgeon. And I was absolutely fascinated. It was a book recommended to me by someone that was treating me at the time with acupuncture. And I just noticed that when I was treated with acupuncture, every time I went, there was a huge amount of emotion came out of me. So that obviously got me interested and intrigued by what we don't see, the invisible energy that we maybe hold in the body, etc. He recommended the book. The book blew my mind. It was about a guy in Brazil that operates on people with a rusty knife and no anesthesia, and apparently bloodless, painless surgeries, and people were getting incredible healings. And there was a story in the book about someone he'd operated on who was paralyzed, and how this guy had stood up even though his legs had no muscles, like lots of muscle atrophy because he'd been in a wheelchair for so long, but still stood up and took some steps. So it wasn't something I'd ever thought about since becoming paralyzed. I guess I just went into the acceptance mode of it. Not entirely, like initially I spent days staring at my feet, willing my toes to move, imagining moving them, wiggling them, in hospital. And then it reached the point after a number of months or however long that I kind of just went, okay, it seems like nothing's coming. So I got on with my life, and I can say I'd reached a point where I felt pretty happy and had lots of things. So it took me by surprise. It wasn't like I'd gone in search of some weird and wacky solution to try and walk again, but this book really captured my imagination. And then I had leave. There was a special offer on with British Airways to Rio, and weirdly, as I was sitting with it, thinking, "Am I crazy?" I'd booked my ticket. There was this group of American. I forgot to say in the back of the book was an email address for an American guy who spent many years making films about the work of Doctor Fritz in South America. And so I just emailed and said I'd love to see the film, and he said, "Well, actually, it's still not finished, but there's a group of American doctors and consultants going down in a couple of weeks' time to meet him and study his work. He is their contact, and there was one place left in the group." So I ended up joining this group of American doctors and surgeons and going down there, and yeah, just really quite crazy experience. But in that run up to that, where I was kind of like, what am I doing? My logical brain kicking in and just going, what? This is crazy. I pulled a book off my shelf that I'd had at home for a number of years, and it was about spiritual healing, and I'd never really read it or engaged with it, and literally just saw it on my shelf, pulled it out, opened it up, and the very page I opened it at was about Dr. Fritz, and I never knew there was a chapter about him in this book.
Oh, wow.
And there were other little strange little things happened. I was in a hotel in Holland for work. There was a Bible at the side of the bed. I'm not religious, but I picked it up, opened it at a page where a guy that was paralyzed was healed by Jesus and what? So I was like, oh my God, why have I just read? Literally, that's the page, the only thing I read. So there were all these weird little things happened. I was like, okay, I'll just go and see what this is all about. So I went and I was operated on, and it was bloodless and painless, and it blew my mind, and it's a pretty incredible experience. But clearly, I'm not physically walking. But I also believe that anything is possible in this world. I really do. And I think that really expanded my mind into the fact that we live with certain sets of paradigms and beliefs, and that actually in other parts of the same world, of this same planet, people have very different belief systems. And so it kind of made me just break down a lot of belief systems that I'd maybe grown up in, and perhaps that opened up a lot of possibility in other ways.
Yeah. Is this guy still working? this doctor, or
Well, he was,
have
I
people
think the
study
one,
him more?
the one I saw, I think he was the third Brazilian, so he channels the spirit of a, I think it sounds crazy, and of a deceased German surgeon who was called Doctor Fritz, who was a World War II surgeon. So he was
Ah,
apparently the third Brazilian to channel his spirit. And of course, there's plenty in the press about it. I mean, he was performing surgeries illegally because he's not a doctor. So in the real life, he's a telecommunications engineer. His
really?
real life name is Rubens Faria, and now
Huh.
I think he's not doing that anymore. I'm not sure. I've lost threads with it. I mean, I think he maybe was shammed as it all being you know, some kind of, I don't know, but he never took any money for anything. There was no money involved at all. So for me, it's like, well, why would someone? And it was a profound experience in many ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. It's almost like the so if multiple people have channeled the same doctor, it's like the Dalai Lama, incarnating so many times. Uh, hmm, that's
It was an
interesting. Oh,
interesting, it was a very interesting period of my life, and it wasn't just Brazil. There was um, quite a lot of Americans in the group came together to get him to come to Maui in the Hawaiian Islands and do some work there. So I ended up going back there, having a second operation, and watching
hmm,
lots of other people be healed, and it was very interesting.
fantastic. Yeah. Oh, maybe we'll chat some more about that sometime. Have there been other moments? I know, so we've already talked about the 79 showing up a bunch, and then we just talked about the signs that were confirming for you to go see this channeling doctor. Have there been other sets of synchronicities like that that pushed you along on a path?
Good question. They're definitely the kind of most significant ones that I bring to mind. So, I mean, plenty of other little tiny examples where you maybe have a thought, you're not sure, and then something happens, you go, okay, that's interesting. That's yeah, uh, that's too weird that just happened, that I'm going to listen to that. But they've been more kind of one-off things rather than a little sequential thing led me to something kind of as big as those two things have.
Yeah.